kids, remember that scene in the 2007 Michael Bay movie where Bumblebee was captured and tortured by Sector 7? Remember how traumatic and difficult that was to watch? You guys want an entire movie of just that? Of course you do! Hello, it's Dragon Keeper 9600, and I'm here to review the 2018 Bumblebee movie, simply called Bumblebee. Now, I know this movie has been out for a few weeks, and you've probably not only seen it, but also seen several other reviews of it. So, that said, I thank you for tuning in to this review anyway. This is a movie that I feel like, because of the heavy Transformers presence on this channel, that I had to do a review for. And as a lot of you Transformers fans know, this movie has been a big deal for the past, year. It has received a lot of hype and a lot of praise as basically the movie that is supposed to, make Transformers a serious film franchise, not just a throwaway blockbuster brain-smashing fest that it has been for the past decade. Wow. So this movie has gotten huge critical praise. It's been lauded for its story and its characters and actually taking a slow, thoughtful approach to Transformers. It is the only Transformers movie so far on Rotten Tomatoes to have a certified fresh rating. The 2007 film and the 1986 film do not even come close to this movie's 93% Rotten Tomatoes rating. So this is a huge deal. This is the good Transformers movie. No more stupid Michael Bay. We are getting a fresh start for this franchise. This is going to be the film that every Transformers fan always wanted to see. So how do I feel about it? It's okay. That's it. I liked it okay. That's all. And I kind of wish I felt more strongly about it than that. I mean, this is a movie that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and it feels weird to say that I wasn't moved by it or that I didn't praise the day that it was gifted onto us. But I just feel like I was expecting not this. And I feel like part of that has to do with my own personal taste and what I like to see in films, and less to do with the film's quality. But we'll get into kind of what I mean and why I maybe was underwhelmed by this movie as we go on. Well, first of all, let's start where I always start with these films, with the basic plot. So, the plot of this film is, in a lot of ways, pretty similar to Transformers Cyberverse, to the point where I think early on in production, the writers of Cyberverse were handed the beat sheet to this movie and said, here, this is what we're doing, make sure the cartoon lines up with this. So Bumblebee is again stranded on Earth without his voice or his memories. And unlike in Cyberverse, though, where we see those scenes via flashbacks, they actually happen on Earth in this version, but the end result is the same. Bumblebee has been given a mission that he can no longer remember by a man, Optimus Prime, that he can also no longer remember, and he needs help to complete his mission because he's basically as lost and frightened as a small, wet kitten. So in the Cyberverse cartoon, he's found by Windblade, his old friend from Cybertron. In this version, he's on Earth alone. No Autobot came after him or with him. Instead, he's found by a human named Charlie. Charlie is the main character of this movie. Yeah, even though the film is named after Bumblebee, Charlie is unquestionably the main character. She has the most screen time, way more lines, a more defined personality, and she goes through an actual character arc through the film. I'm tired of this. I know I'm not alone in this, and I know the 2007 movie got criticized for this. We don't need human faffing around in Transformers films, okay? When we see Transformers films, in the cartoons, the main characters are always the Transformers. That's unquestionably the case. And, here it's like Hollywood is afraid of having a non-human protagonist in a live-action film. Like in an animated film, you'll have a whole cast of ponies or whatever, and it doesn't matter. But a live-action film, there's, some kind of, weird phobia. No, the main character has to be human. It's not that Charlie is inherently a bad character. It's just, I feel like the pages of a young adult romance script were mixed in with my Transformers movie. I don't want this. I don't want personal life, I don't get along with my parents. I don't want bullies. I can't get my crush. Like, I don't want any of that. I want my Transformers. So you're getting in the way of my Anyway, so Charlie finds Bumblebee at this junkyard that she frequents, and through various means, she obtains him. And yeah, surprise, surprise, the new car that she's got and loves, even though it's an old beat-up wreck, turns out to be an alien robot. So Charlie and Bumblebee, like, bond, while meanwhile, Sector 7, yes, they're in this movie, led by John Cena for some reason, try to track Bumblebee down with the help of two Decepticons who have come to Earth to track him because they believe Bumblebee knows the location of Optimus Prime. And thus, they'll be able to win the war because the Autobots are basically pretty close to losing the war. In this version, no mention is made of the Allspark. Even though this is supposedly kind of a prequel to the Michael Bay movies, I guess, maybe. More on that in a second. But basically, the reason the Optimus sent Bumblebee to Earth was because he wants to establish a new Autobot base on Earth and needs Bumblebee to go first to make sure the floors are clean or whatever. I don't know. It's a little vague what Optimus expects Bumblebee to do. And it's also not explained at all how Optimus found Earth. Like, he literally just says, I found a planet where we can live. Like, that's all the intro we get to it. How did you find this planet? When? Why did you decide it was this planet particularly that you had to move on? In the Michael Bay films, it was because of the Allspark. That's why Megatron came, that's why Bumblebee came, and that's why everybody else came all over the Earth. Just came all over it. Sorry. But this version is just kind of like, this place looks cool, I guess. I found it at the bottom of the toolbox, so I guess we'll live here now. Dumb! Anyway, the Decepticons rather stupidly convinced Sector 7 that Bumblebee is a criminal from Cybertron and that they're the good guys who are there to bring him home before he causes damage to Earth. John Cena believes this, kinda not really, but other characters in Sector 7 do. So he has no choice to cooperate with the Decepticons. They hunt Bumblebee and Charlie down, forcing them to go on the run. Bumblebee eventually remembers his mission, completes it, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. You know how in the 2007 Michael Bay movie, and I will be making a lot of comparisons to the Michael Bay movies because I feel like I can't do this review without doing that, and the movie itself is begging to be compared to the Michael Bay films. You know how in that film, the moment in between when Sam discovers that Bumblebee is an alien robot and when Sector 7 shows up at his house is like maybe 15 minutes? Well, what if you took the space between those two beats and stretch them out to an hour? And that's basically Bumblebee. They spend a lot of time in this film not really doing anything, just kind of waiting for the villains to show up, because this movie is supposed to be about the bond between Charlie and Bumblebee, and how basically the story has a story, which the Michael Bay films don't really. The only narrative question, that is, that the Michael Bay films ever bothered to ask is, are you a bad enough dude to save the world? And the Bumblebee film is trying to ask, like, they're basically trying to tell the story of learning to love again. Charlie's deal is that her father has recently passed away, and her mother has remarried quite recently. So she has a stepdad, a stepbrother, and a mom who is really, really willing to move on, like, in a disturbingly quick pace, but Haley has not yet recovered. She's a shut-in, she's shy, she's asocial, she's, like, become closed off, and her family criticize her quite unfairly for being morose and dragging everybody down. But the fact is she's not over her grief yet, but then she meets Bumblebee, and Bumblebee, like, by meeting this person who needs her, she slowly learns to open up and learn to love again. And there are, like, all these callbacks later in the film, like, she used to be a diving champion, she was encouraged by her father, and early on in the film, she's shown throwing away all her diving trophies because they take up room in her room. But really, it's more like, it's too painful, I can't look at it anymore. And then there's a scene later where she's trying to dive into the water with some, to impress her crush, but she can't bring herself to do it. But then at the end of the film, she again there's basically, Bumblebee is trapped below this wreck at the well, he's not trapped, but he's like sunk into this large body of water, and Charlie doesn't know where she is, so she finally sums up the courage and dives in after her. And that's like a symbolic arc that like tries to track how she's like learned to accept that part of her that she had left behind and become the person she used to be again. And she even says something at the end of the movie where like, thank you for helping me feel like me again. And it's a really heartwarming arc. And it's way more than the Michael Bay films ever attempted with their main characters, which were basically just power fantasy. Like, Sam Witwicky, I get the girl, I get the car, I get to save the world. God, I'm cool. And Cade Yeager, I don't even remember what his arc was. Arc. But that's what I mean when I say Charlie's the main character. Like, she develops, she grows, she learns to reclaim her old self and move on with her grief. And Bumblebee is like, yeah. The thing is, this movie spends so much time on Charlie and Bumblebee bonding that I feel like we're not getting anywhere. Now, the Michael Bay films were too fast-paced while simultaneously being sluggish. So, like, they were doing a lot of things and moving to a lot of places, but the actual story was staying in the same place. This has the opposite problem, where the story is progressing, but the actions are just like, Bumblebee was sent here on a crucial mission. He's supposed to keep the planet safe. And here he is, messing around on the beach with Charlie, or egging someone's car, and then stomping on the car. I guess protecting the planet doesn't include protecting people's property. But then again, he doesn't remember Optimus told him to do that, so I guess it's fine. And, like, playing 80s music and watching The Breakfast Club, because this movie takes place in the 80s, and it does not want you to forget it. And I feel like there's, like, this is one of those, like, stop and play around movies where, like, a lot of the film time is taken up with just, let's hang out. and while it makes sense in story because Bumblebee has forgotten his mission, he's forgotten so many of his memories that he's not even aware that he has a mission. And what actually makes it worse is that he can't talk at all. In a lot of ways, I like this portrayal of Bumblebee better than Cyberverse Bumblebee because I've made it clear in my Cyberverse reviews and reactions, Cyberverse Bumblebee's habit of speaking through the radio is fucking irritating. It's always like this weird, like, 90s-ish commercial, and he's got this, like, peppy attitude that he doesn't seem to have in the scenes where, in his mind, where he actually talks. Whereas Bumblebee in the film, his actions come across more through his body language. Like, okay, this is something I noticed early on. But Bumblebee is pretty badly damaged in his fight with Blitzwing. And as a result of that trauma, I guess, of losing his voice and his memories and God knows what else is going on with him, Bumblebee has this habit of crouching down really small. Like, even though he's bigger than Charlie, when Charlie first sees him, she panics and backs up and tries to run. Sorry. But Bumblebee, you could see in the corner behind her, is trying to back up too because he's scared. And any time that Charlie loses her temper or snaps at him, which does happen a few times because Bumblebee is basically now has been Uified into someone with the mind of a toddler, but the strength of, like, the Juggernaut. So anytime she yells at him or seems angry, he, like, shrinks down and cowers again, as if he's afraid she'll hit him. And that is really strong. Like, that's great characterization, to just get it through with body language like that. I remember there's one scene in Cyberverse where Windblade wants to hook the cortical psychic patch into Bumblebee for the second time, after the first time fried him and, like, sent this huge shockwave out, and he, like, panics and throws it away and pouts. And, like, I kind of wish more of Cyberverse Bumblebee was like that, of his actions just coming across silently through body language. However, the reason it becomes a problem is that Bumblebee not having his memories doesn't factor into the plot, and I feel like it would factor in if Bumblebee could speak, because then we'd notice the contrast more through his dialogue. If you could hear him say things like, I don't know where I am, or I'm trying, there's something I've got to do, but I don't remember what it is, or even, what am I? Whereas, like, it would come across more strongly. Whereas in this version, it seems like Bumblebee has been reduced almost to a pet. Like, this is, I don't know, Black Beauty or something. Like, she's met a horse instead of an alien soldier. it seems like Bumblebee's character was only given one note in this film, and that was be cute. No matter what you're doing in any scene, be adorable. We will make you coo over a 16-foot robot, damn it. So anytime Bumblebee is on scene, he seems to just be directed by what's the cutest thing to do possible. Cower in the corner like a kitten? Okay. Sorta kinda dance to an 80s song? Sure. Encourage Haley to go... Sorry, Charlie. I keep having this problem with calling her Haley after her actor. Encourage Charlie to go diving by hitting her in the back with the door gently. Yeah, okay. Like, everything is just like, oh, look how cute he is. Even when he's being tortured, which is often in this movie. Like, it's almost like it was written by a fan. All the abuse Bumblebee goes through. Like, when he's been captured by Sector 7 or attacked by Decepticons who don't understand why he's taken a sudden dip in his fighting skills. It's like, and he's like cringing and cowering. It's like, man, they're basically giving us the Autobot version of Wall-E. And it's cute and it makes him likable, and it does make his bond with Haley believable, since people do bond with babies quite quickly. It's also like, man, I feel like your mission is kind of like an afterthought in this film. Like, you're just kind of hanging, due to his condition, he's just kind of hanging out. And there's like a sense of urgency that neither Bumblebee nor Charlie are feeling because of this hanging out quality of the film. And for a film that's been praised so much for its characterization and slow, thoughtful story, the characterization present seems kind of generic. Charlie is a relatable character, but I feel like that she's relatable in that her problems are relatable, but nothing about her personality quite stands out. She's just typical, like, world-weary teenager, 18-year-old, and she does have a reason for being that way, but it's also like, kind of like, this character exists in other films. I've seen a lot of people compare this movie to The Iron Giant, whereas with Transformers Prime, they were trying to go for the Iron Giant in terms of tone. This film seems like it's a remake of the Iron Giant, but with Transformers instead of Vin Diesel. So it hits all the same beats. He meets an alien, the slow befriending. There's even the, like, slowly unveils it to other people, change my life. The government comes after them because they're paranoid. There's even this scene where Bumblebee is attacked by Sector 7 and he goes into, like, defense mode. His eyes turn red and he starts blindly shooting. At Sector 7, he's causing carnage and mayhem and destruction, and Charlie has to talk him down and remind him that he's not a gun. It's like, I didn't come here to see an Iron Giant remake. What is this? Iron Giant is a good film, and it's a film I love, but Transformers shouldn't be the Iron Giant. It should be Transformers, and I feel like it's losing its identity in this attempt to please the critics. It's like, not that I want to go back to the Bay movies, God no, but I feel like this movie should have an identity that's uniquely Transformers. And I feel like it doesn't quite have that. And the character itself is kind of... This film's, even though it's not directed by Michael Bay, thank God, it does suffer from some of the same things that the Michael Bay film suffered from. The biggest one being obnoxious background character syndrome. Like, oh my gosh. You know how every character in a Bay film seemed like they were trying out for, like, a one-man show? Like, you had Bernie Mac as the weirdly off-putting car salesman in the first movie, or the weirdly invasive Asian guy in Dark of the Moon who harasses Sam in the bathroom. Like, what was up with that? Or his boss in the same movie. Or you have Mr. There isn't a tighter shirt, we chat guy in the second film. Like, all those obnoxious characters, they're all still here. Like, that's one of the main things that we're hoping we get away from Michael Bay, but they're all still here. Charlie, like I mentioned earlier, is harassed by bullies, and these are the most one-dimensional, tiresome bullies that you have ever seen in a film. Like, imagine, like, stereotypical mean girl bitches who make fun of her for everything. Way she dresses, having a lame job, being unable to dive off the cliff in that earlier scene they mentioned. They even make fun of her for having a dead father. like, there's this scene where, like, they're telling her... Like, they're making fun of her for her car, another thing they make fun of her for, and they say, like, why don't you get your dad to fix it up? Oh, wait. It's like, fuck you. But it's not just in terms of, like, stereotypical, like, character types. There's also, like, the scene where the two Decepticons I mentioned come to Earth. Their names are Dropkick and Shatter, by the way. They're triple changers. They're generic, too. When they come to Earth, we cut to, like, this redneck couple who are having this fight because this guy spent all the money that was supposed to go to a house, into a car, and when, like, the first Decepticon lands in the protoform shell, he's afraid that it'll hit his car, but it misses, but then the second one hits his car. It's like, why are we spending so much time on this bit? It's not funny. There's tons of characters like that, and tons of weird lines like that. But the absolute worst of all these obnoxious characters are Charlie's family. And I already mentioned the problem with her family feels like she isn't moving on fast enough, which is a problem that struck with me personally, which made me sympathize with Charlie to the point where I had no patience for her family and their lack of patience for her sadness. It was basically like, hey, we're ready to be happy. Why aren't you, you selfish prick? Like, there's one scene early on where it's Charlie's 18th birthday, and her mother gives her, like, a bicycle helmet instead of the car she wants because her mom can't afford a car. Okay, fair enough. But then her stepfather, Ron, who's like been shown to be kind of clueless. He's got this wide-eyed dumbass expression throughout the entire film. He gives her a book whose actual title it's a self-help book. And I swear to God, this is the actual title. It's Smile for Once. No, Smile for a Change. That's what it's called. That's the book he gives her. Like, he's like trying to tell her that smiling can like make you feel better and raise endorphins, and it would really improve your outlook if you would just smile once in a while. And from that exact moment on, for the rest of the film, nothing Ron did or said could make me like him. That was a dick move. Like, that's not just a funny little mistake or a guy who's clueless about how to raise teenage girls. That was actually mean-spirited, okay? That is not cool, and I was not okay with him. Or the film seemed to treat that like that was, like, even Charlie's mother was embarrassed by that. And, like, that deserved, I hope she gave him a long talking to off screen, because what the fuck? But the mom herself seems to have no patience for Charlie's grief over her dead father. Breathe. Okay. There's a scene at the end of the film where after Bumblebee's mission is accomplished, he has to move on, which is understandable. Sector 7 knows where that Bumblebee is at Haley's house now, so he can't stay there, he's got to go. But he wants Haley to come with him, and Haley declines, saying like, no, I have to stay with my family, they need me. And I know that's supposed to be symbolic of her arc, but like, I was kind of with Bumblebee. Go with him! Your family doesn't need you! There's never a point where they aren't either exasperated with her or not treating her poorly. It's not that they're outright abusive to her. It's just like they don't seem like they care about her all that much. I mean, her mom did buy her something nice on her birthday. Something a little weird, like that bicycle helmet looked like it was designed with a 5-year-old in mind, but still, she's worried about her safety. But her brother is obnoxious. Ron is a dick. And there's this scene, like, early on where Charlie makes the mistake of leaving Bumblebee alone in the garage. So he wanders into the house and wrecks it because, like I said, he's been newified to the mind of a toddler. Will anyone get an Elfin Lee joke anymore? Anyway, so when Charlie's mother comes home, she assumes that Charlie wrecked the house. Like, she doesn't think, oh my God, someone broke in. She's immediately like, Charlie, what did you do? And I'm like, you have no trust in your daughter whatsoever. This has been a girl who is shown to not really cause trouble. The biggest thing that she did that you're upset with is that she obtained a car. Keep in mind, it's a car that she didn't have to pay for in an era where people do not wear seatbelts. There's a scene explicitly later where Ron says, maybe we should get some seatbelts for our car, because I guess this takes place before that was mandatory. I know seatbelts weren't always mandatory. In fact, they became mandatory, like, not that long before I was born. But anyway... And, her concern that the car is unsafe comes across as hypocritical. And, it's, like, there aren't really any moments where Charlie connects with her mother. She just decides to stop being angry at her. Okay, cool, but that doesn't mean you don't have to go with Bumblebee. I mean, you're not useless like other humans. You actually did help save the day, and you've turned 18, and what are you going to learn in college anyway? Who Christopher Columbus was? Fuck Christopher Columbus. Go with Bumblebee! Like, they're trying to sell this connection between her family that I don't buy. Ron's attempt at redemption also is not one that I really buy. I mean, basically, there's a scene later in the film after Bumblebee and Charlie have already escaped from Sector 7 where they're driving away, and Ron and her mother, whose name I can't remember, sorry, drive up and try to catch up with them, but then they realize that they're being chased by Sector 7. So Ron's reaction is to do all this crazy swerving, which he says he saw in Miami Vice, and cause basically like a four-way wreck that blocks the intersection so that John Cena can't get to Charlie. And that was supposed to be his redeeming moment where he's helping save the day instead of just being the annoying parent. But I didn't buy it. First of all, Charlie's mother is very understandably angry at him for doing that. Not just because he caused a wreck, but because he caused a wreck while his son was in the back seat. Yeah, his 12-year-old son, Charlie's stepbrother Otis, was sitting back there without a seatbelt while he was serpentining and causing a four-way intersection that could have very easily gotten all three of them killed. Like, no, Ron, that wasn't a badass moment. That was you being even more of a dipshit somehow. I thought we left the dipshit parents behind in the first three movies. What is this Okay, so Dropkick and Shatter. I mentioned them already, and I said that they're generic. How are they generic? They don't really have any personality except Decepticons forever. They're triple changers. Shatter is female, and she's red. Dropkick is blue and male. And basically their only personality is Dropkick is dumber and a little more violent, whereas Shatter is the adult who has to steer him around. And I feel like what people liked about Transformers, and certainly what made G1 so incredibly popular back in the 80s, was that the Decepticons had clear-cut and likable personalities. You will never forget G1 Starscream. Or Rumble, or Soundwave, or Megatron himself, or any of these assholes who the Decepticons work with. They were dicks, but they were all such likable dicks, and they were all dicks in all these different, colorful, likable ways. And Dropkick's main thing is that he likes to shoot humans because he likes it when they pop. That's really what he says. I like the way they pop. Shatter's main thing is that she's serious. And I mentioned earlier that they're bad at lying. For a group called Decepticons, Decepticons are astonishingly bad at lying. Like, they do this thing where, like, they meet up with Sector 7 and they get down on one knee and they say, please help us find the fugitive. And you could actually audibly hear Dropkick muttering, ugh, this is so humiliating, as he's doing it. And they still somehow buy. Okay, John Cena doesn't buy it because he was injured in the fight between Blitzwing and Bumblebee. Kind of like that character from G1, Gregory, from The Return of Optimus Prime. He was injured. He got a scar on his face from a fight between Optimus and Megatron, and ever since then he hates Transformers. John Cena is basically a more mature take on that. Rather than blaming Optimus specifically for something that he didn't mean to do, in a world where Autobots have been firmly established and well-known protectors of Earth for years, John Cena's, whose name is Jack, but I'm going to keep calling him John Cena because he's John Cena. John Cena's first experience with Cybertrons is they immediately come to Earth, cause a huge fight, and give him a scar that he has for the rest of the movie. Okay, fair enough. So John Cena does not buy that Shatter and Dropkick are here to help humans. He's like, open fire, we don't need them. But this other guy, Powell, who is also with Sector 7, is eager for the chance to communicate with robots. Doesn't occur to him that these robots might not be the ones that he wants to interact with, and is totally willing to help them find Bumblebee. Now, it's not quite as dumb as Nest releasing a bunch of Decepticon criminals just because Megatron asked them to so they could track down Bumblebee. And last night, seriously, what was up with that? That was really dumb. But it's pretty dumb. And I feel like John Cena is like the only adult in the room and the table at Sector 7. There's actually one point where he says, like, they call themselves Decepticons. Is that not setting off any red flags for anyone? It's like, Thank you. This question needs to be asked more often. I like in Prime when when Orion Pax, like dememoried Optimus, is like, why do we call ourselves Decepticons if we're the good guys? It's like, this is something more people should question. And I even heard like chuckling in the room when John Cena said that line, because it's a good line. But no, they decide to side with the Decepticons and even give them access to their huge satellite network on the off chance that they might go to the Russians instead. No, really, that's what Powell says, to convince the head of Sector 7 to let the Decepticons basically into all of the U.S. government shit, is they might go to the Russians instead. Great. We're glad the security of the Earth is in your hands. This brings up something that's a little weird about a criticism to make, especially in connection with the Michael Bay films. Hello, Colton. Is that this film's story doesn't always make sense. And I'm talking about, like, just kind of plot things. Like, things that, I guess I said story, but what I really mean is plot. Like, things that don't really matter to the story of Charlie's arc of learning to love again, or Bumblebee's arc of returning to the person he used to be before he was injured. But more about, like, wait, why did that happen? Wait, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I already said how Optimus's mission to Bumblebee is vague. Not like in Cyberverse, where it was very explicitly, I need you to locate the Allspark. It was in this version, kind of get it ready for us. But also, like, they give the Decepticons access to all their shit, never questioning how the Decepticons are perfectly able to speak English. It's, you can talk, and not, you can speak English, a language that you should have never had any exposure to. And, like, the Decepticons basically invent the internet by hacking their satellites. Okay. And they find Bumblebee because Bumblebee accidentally sticks himself, while he's faffing around in Charlie's house, sticks a prong thingy into the electrical socket, which sends out his energy signature across the grid, which is what they pick up on. That relied on a lot of coincidences to link up. Like, what if Bumblebee had never been stupid enough to say, ooh, a sharp socket in the wall, I'm going to put my hand into it. And, there's a scene earlier where Bumblebee and Charlie drive into Sector 7 and they're captured. They tase Bumblebee a lot. Again, in one of those scenes that's reminiscent of the capture scene in the 2007 movie. Haley reaches out to touch him. She gets shocked too. She passes out. And she wakes up in her own bedroom. Wait, what? Yeah, Sector 7 apparently took her home, dumped her in her bed, instead of taking her into custody like they did in the 2007 movie. And it's really bad when the 2007 film seems like, in some ways, it makes more sense than this film. Why the fuck did they take Charlie home? Why is John Cena trying to calmly explain to her family that she had a hallucination involving giant robots? Like, claim that she did a crime and arrest her. She's had direct contact with the robot. I don't understand. But there's also Charlie has a love interest that's not Bumblebee. Bumblebee instead is supposed to be seen as kind of, in a weird way, a replacement for her dad, which is odd because it seems like Charlie is the one fulfilling the motherly role for Bumblebee. Bumblebee's not being a father to Charlie, but whatever. Charlie's love interest is this guy named Memo. Memo? It's spelled like Memo. I don't exactly know how it's pronounced because every time he says it, he's like mumbling, but I didn't mention him so far because he's not really worth mentioning. This film could function fine without him. I don't know why he's here. I guess it's supposed to be that Charlie is healing by, like, reaching out to other friends, but I don't care about him. And though he is a love interest, there's a scene at the end where he's reaching to hold her hand and she, like, pushes him away, like, I don't think we're there yet. It's like, I don't think you'll ever get there. Like, who is this guy? Why is he insisting on being in this movie? Go away. A lot of the times with the human characters, I was like, go away. Get off the screen. Where are the robots? So, bitch and moan, bitch and moan. Is there anything I did like about this film? Well, I already said that I identify with Charlie's character, and I do appreciate that the film has a story. This film has fewer fight scenes than the Michael Bay films, and I feel like this is something that was very consciously done because they're very obviously trying to establish a contrast with the Michael Bay films, not only because they don't want to make the same mistakes that Michael Bay did, but because, and I feel like this might be kind of a less noble reason, but I'm going to put it out there anywhere, directors, even good directors, tend to have egos. It's just a character trait that comes with the profession. And I feel like Travis Knight wants to make himself different from Michael Bay, not just to be better than Michael Bay, but also because he wants to stand out as having his own voice in Transformers. That's not a bad thing. Hell, we do not need another Michael Bay in this franchise, but I feel like the fewer fight scenes are less because that's what the story needed, though it is true that there are story benefits to that. But also because I don't want to be Bay, I want to be me. This is a Travis Knight film. That being said, the fight scenes themselves, they're pretty great. And it's not just because they aren't edited like they're on PCP anymore, so you can actually tell what's happening. They're creative, they're fun, and most of them, there's genuine tension. I keep going back again and again to the fight with Bumblebee and Blitzwing. Now, Blitzwing got a huge reception in the initial trailers for this movie, mostly because people mistook him for Starscream. And I have to say it right now, Blitzwing does not have a huge presence in the movie and does not factor hugely. He does factor hugely in the plot because he's the reason Bumblebee doesn't have his voice and memories. But he also dies in the scene where he fights Bumblebee. So while he hugely changes the plot, he doesn't factor into the story after that. The fight with him and Bumblebee, though, is pretty great. And I especially love the way Bumblebee kills him. Because it's... when they tell you to fight creatively in, what's that anime, Apocalypse Zero? This is what they mean. So, like, basically, Blitzwing has Bumblebee by the throat, which he has already kind of torn open, Patrick Swayze style, and he's about to execute him. Bumblebee rips open his forearm where his missiles are stored. You know, the missile pops up and it fires. He rips that out, he sticks it into Blitzwing's chest, and then he shoots it so it explodes. Boom! One grenade, one shot. It was awesome. I was like, oh my god, Blitzwing's fucking dead. But it was great. There's also, it takes way too long for Bumblebee to finally fight, drop kick, and shatter on his own terms. Because when they first find Bumblebee, he's weak, he's lost his memories, he doesn't remember how to fight, he only just recently rediscovered that he has a battle mask, he has no idea what he's doing, so they just, like, kick him in the side, and they're like, what is this? But later, he gets his memories back, and he actually fights them one at a time. First dropkick and then shatter. And I'm just going to say he kills both of them. So I doubt that we'll see them again in future installments. Because when Decepticons die in this movie, they explode. It's like they're loaded with fireworks and napalm. Like, no matter how they die, there's always like a huge fire explosion. And I think this was done so that there would be no doubt that they were dead. Like, they didn't want to do a barricade. Like, maybe he lived, maybe he didn't. It's like, no, these characters are dead. But, so the way he kills Dropkick is pretty great. He basically wraps him around with these chains, and he, like, pulls tight, and Dropkick's like, you think these chains can hold me? But then Bumblebee keeps pulling, and the chains actually tear through him, and he falls apart, and then explodes. I was like, oh, shit! And Shatter's death scene was pretty cool, too. And, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me talk about the lead into the climax. So basically, after an hour of faffing around and young adult shit, Sector 7 catches up with Bumblebee, but instead of torturing him themselves, they let Dropkick and Shatter torture him. So basically, they're zapping Bumblebee and trying to, like, get him to tell him where Optimus is, and never checking that one of their fellow comrades very not wisely tore out Bumblebee's voice so he can't testify, but also, even if he could talk, he doesn't remember where he is. Whoops. But then they accidentally hit a spot and a holographic transmission from Optimus Prime comes out, which was foreshadowed earlier, so it's not like this came out of nowhere. You know, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that kind of thing. So basically Optimus says the plan that he's going to bring other Autobots to Earth. So Dropkick and Shatter are excited because Optimus is coming here and they're going to cut off They're going to end the Autobot. They call it a rebellion, which I find interesting. The Autobot rebellion right here. They just have to be ready for Optimus when he arrives. So the plan around which the climax revolves, and I am 100% not exaggerating, is to send a text message to Shockwave to tell him to send the rest of the Decepticons to be ready for Optimus. And I am so not kidding. It is 100% a text message. Like, they have to go to this radio tower so that it can be powerful enough to send the message, and you actually see what, like, in English, not Cybertronian, as it's scrolling across the screen, like, found Autobot base, send army. Like, that's what it says. It looks like a text. I expect there to be the rest of it, like Shatter sends, where you at? And bring pizza, vegetarian. Like, I don't know why that struck me as so funny, but it did. But basically, before they leave, Dropkick shoots Bumblebee, what he thinks is fatally, and they leave. They also kill Powell, because fuck Powell. But when Charlie finds him, she sees Bumblebee dead, and she finds Sector 7's shotguns, which are guns that fire electricity, which they use to capture Bumblebee, and she zaps him over and over. And not only does that wake him up, but it also causes his memory cells, which had been damaged, to reboot, gaining his memories. And again, Bumblebee can't talk. So I feel like this moment would have had more of an impact if Bumblebee could speak, because all the payoff to his memories coming back is a loading bar on the screen that says memories restored that slowly refills. It's like, the fact that Bumblebee's lost his memories, it was like it's a huge part of the plot in Cyberverse. And this, it just seems like an afterthought. Like, oh, by the way, he lost his memories. Because it's like, it doesn't, because Bumblebee is pet status, it doesn't come up as much. And it's a good thing that shocking him over and over with the zappy things waked him up and didn't just do more damage, because you really lucked out on that one, Charlie. Anyway, so Charlie and Bumblebee managed to catch up with Shatter and Dropkick, thanks to Ron nearly killing his son several times in a row. Thanks, Ron. They catch up. Cool fight. Charlie actually contributes, and I like this because, like, Bumblebee wants her to stay back at first because he's the hardened soldier. He'll do it with it, and he, like, lowers her into a dumpster to hide. And I hope that there's a gif somewhere of him slowly lowering her into a dumpster, because I feel like that could be a meme very easily. But anyway, Charlie actually does contribute by climbing to the top of the tower, which is very treacherous, and cutting off the energon cell that is being used to power the transmission. So she nearly dies several times while this is happening, but she finally gets it done. The transmission stops mid-sentence. The Decepticons have no idea that they're here. And this is the only point where I think we get signs of an interesting character from Shatter, because she does not take her mission being interrupted well. She fucking, like, tackles Bumblebee and starts, like, pummeling him over and over in the face really hard while screaming in frustration. It's like, personality. Finally. Here it is. We needed more of that, please. Bumblebee defeats her, saves John Cena in the process, so John Cena gives Bumblebee a head start before the rest of Sector 7 gets there. Bumblebee and Charlie part very dramatically, and Charlie is now a happier, more well-adjusted person. And Bumblebee reunites with Optimus, who finally arrived on Earth. So that's basically the film. Much simpler plot than the Michael Bay films, which is a good thing, but I wish that the film focused less on human faffing, as I've been calling it. Now let me get... There's one more thing about the end of the film I want to mention, because this gets into the film's, like, indecision about whether or not it's a prequel. And it's an indecision that is really fucking with fans like me. And I feel like it is a result of the film's troubled kind of production history. Troubled. Basically, the idea is that this film was originally meant to be 100% a prequel to the Michael Bay films, But the Michael Bay films were canceled because The Last Night sucks ass. So the sixth film that was supposed to come out after The Last Night, the one that was clearly foreshadowed at the end of Last Night when like Quintessa is like calls out to the other people to like destroy Unicron, that film's not happening because nobody wants it. I don't want it, you don't want it, nobody wants it. So this film has like been very clumsily retooled into a reboot instead of a prequel, but not really. Because there are a lot of things here that are clearly artifacts from the Bay movies that now just kind of exist without a presence, without a reason. Sector 7 itself was originally founded because of the discovery of Megatron, called NBE-1, and the Allspark. And the Sector 7 logo in the background, still has that like cube shape that is clearly patterned after the Allspark. The Allspark is never mentioned once by any character. The word is not even said. Megatron is not mentioned by anyone at any point. We don't see him on Cybertron. We don't hear him mentioned by any of the characters. Shockwave and Starscream seem to be running the Decepticons, which is like, is that even legal to like not mention Megatron in a film? Or Transformers fiction at all? Agent Simmons cameos, like a much younger Agent Simmons, not played by John Turturro. And like they say, like, Simmons, like, sit down. Like, it's like, is that supposed to be the Simmons from the first 3 Transformers movies? And the 5th one for no reason? Why was he in that movie? He had nothing to do. And like, at the end of the film, Bumblebee turns, like, he's been a Beetle, like a Volkswagen Beetle throughout the movie. At the end of the film, he changes his disguise by scanning a Camaro. So he's a Camaro now, like he was in the 2007 film, but he's not the same type of Camaro. And what's even weirder is at the end of the film, Optimus is on Earth, and they've called several other Autobots to Earth, and you see them in the sky coming down. It's like, this is more Autobots than was on Earth in the first film, where it was established that only Bumblebee was there. So it's like, they're alluding to the first film, while contradicting it. It's bizarre. They can't decide. And so we as the fans don't know where this movie stands in terms of anything, really. It's basically, I think that indecision is what marks a lot of this film, because it's trying to be like a restart for the franchise and a fresh new direction and a character-driven story and all this stuff, and it doesn't quite succeed, in my eyes at least, at being any of that, because it feels like it's trying to concern with being all of that instead of being a Transformers movie. And I do appreciate this film as an experiment. Let's try to do something different with Transformers. Let's try to make this about character. But that doesn't work because the character itself is either uninteresting, generic, or obnoxious. What I like to see mostly in Transformer stories is what I saw in Prime, or animated, or even Armada, which I know isn't as good as this film, but it still has things I did, was that it had a lot of characters. They all had clear personalities that stood out. They all interacted in interesting ways, and there wasn't any school shit. And I know there was school shit in Armada, but notice how nobody liked the episodes where there was school shit? People thought the series was good once they got off Earth and it got really serious and we got into the space opera shit. That's what we want to see in Transformers. So, I've heard that a sequel for this movie with Optimus Prime in the starring role has already been greenlit, and you can bet that I will see it. And I do appreciate this film, like I said, for going in a new direction and trying something different. But in between the slow-paced young adult stuff in this movie and the frantic, frenetic, frankly misogynistic stuff in the original films, we can hit a middle ground. We can have this cool, like, epic story with these richly developed characters that aren't just throwaway one-shot, one-man show bits or generically evil, the planet is ours characters. Like, we're going to hit that sweet spot that Prime hit. And you can't really tell the same type of story that Prime told with an ensemble cast because it's a movie, not a TV series, but please try. Take a cue from the Marvel movies. Like, they have, like, really developed stories, and they don't spend half the time at school, except Spider-Man Homecoming did. And I didn't really like it there either. But anyway, that's my personal take. A lot of people love this movie. I'll definitely see the Optimus Prime spinoff when it comes out. I just wish that I could like it more. But hey, you don't always get what you wish for, and I felt leagues better coming out of this movie than I did out of the last night. So take that for what it's worth. I hope my difference in opinion was one that made sense to you, even if you didn't agree with it, and more Cyberverse reactions will be coming up very shortly. This is John Keeper 96600, signing off.